There's a plant on a windowsill in probably a third of American kitchens. Almost nobody treats it like medicine. It just sits there, forgotten. 12 plants, all grow indoors, year-round, in an ordinary pot. Every one has a documented history for the everyday stuff. Digestion, sleep, colds. One was studied for memory. The effect showed up within minutes of smelling it, not swallowing it, smelling it. Another has more nausea research than half of what's in your bathroom cabinet. Number 4 has been used for sleep longer than most written history. Number 9 surprises people every time. Most decided it's just a pizza topping. I spent 20 years as a registered nurse. I watched people reach for a pill for things their grandmothers fixed with a plant. A pot on the porch. That gap never left me. Nothing here replaces your doctor. I'm a retired nurse, not a prescriber. What I'm sharing is what the research says, and what the bedside taught me. Let's start with number 1. It's probably already in your kitchen. Aloe vera. If you've ever burned your hand on a pan and reached for a leaf instead of a tube of cream, you already know this one works before anyone in a lab ever explained why. Cut one of those thick leaves open and you'll find a clear, slippery gel inside. That gel is mostly water, but it's water carrying a mix of plant compounds that seem to calm irritated skin and help it hold on to moisture while it heals. Think of it less like medicine and more like a natural bandage that happens to be alive. Research on topical aloe consistently points toward the same thing: support for minor burns, sunburn, and everyday skin irritation, applied directly to the skin. I want to be clear about that word, topical. This is a plant for the outside of you, not something I'd recommend drinking from the whole leaf, since the outer rind carries compounds that can upset your stomach. People have been using this plant this exact way for a remarkably long stretch of recorded history. Ancient Egyptian medical texts describe applying it to wounds and skin complaints, and it shows up again and again across Mediterranean and Middle Eastern folk medicine over the following centuries. That's not a fad. That's a plant that kept earning its place, generation after generation. I keep one on my kitchen windowsill, right by the stove, for exactly that reason. Every kitchen burn I've ever had, that plant was closer than the first aid drawer. Simple, and it asks for almost nothing back. A little light, water maybe every 3 weeks, and it just keeps giving. One caution worth mentioning: some people do get a mild skin reaction to aloe, so if you've never used it before, try a small patch first, same as you would with anything new on your skin. One mix-up worth knowing about: garden centers sometimes sell decorative succulents labeled loosely as aloe that aren't the true medicinal species at all, and they won't carry the same properties. Look for the specific name Aloe vera or Aloe barbadensis on the tag before you bring one home. Real aloe has that thick, almost rubbery leaf with small, soft teeth running along the edge and a gel that's genuinely slippery between your fingers, not just watery. A systematic review of burn trials found aloe healed first and second-degree burns nearly 9 days faster on average than petroleum jelly gauze in controlled studies. That's a meaningful difference for a plant that costs you nothing beyond a pot of soil and a sunny windowsill to maintain. A God-given plant if I ever met one, patient enough to wait weeks between drinks and still show up for you the moment you need it. Let's move to the next one, and this one's for your morning cup of coffee. Rosemary. Most people know it as the thing you throw in with roasted potatoes and forget about. I'd argue it deserves a spot closer to your desk than your stovetop. A handful of small studies have looked at what happens when people simply smell rosemary while doing a memory or attention task, and several found a measurable bump in performance, sometimes within minutes. Nobody swallowed anything. They just had the plant nearby. The leading theory involves a compound in the plant's oil that appears to interact with the same chemical messenger system involved in attention and recall, sort of like it's gently tapping a switch that's already there. Evidence indicates the effect is modest, not dramatic, but it's consistent enough across studies that researchers keep circling back to it. Rosemary's association with memory isn't new either. Ancient Greek students reportedly wore sprigs of it in their hair while studying for exams, and it kept turning up in wedding and funeral traditions across Europe for centuries afterward, always tied to memory and remembrance. Turns out there may have been something to that beyond superstition. I keep a pot of it right by where I do my paperwork, bills, letters, that sort of thing. Might be nothing more than habit at this point. Might be the rosemary. Either way, I'm not moving it. Worth noting, rosemary in cooking amounts is simply food, but concentrated rosemary extract in supplement form can interact with certain blood pressure medications, so that's another one to mention to your doctor if you're considering it beyond the kitchen. Rosemary isn't just one plant either. Upright varieties are the ones bred for cooking and for indoor pots, standing tall and staying fairly compact, while creeping rosemary trails sideways and does better spilling over a garden wall outdoors. If you're picking one out for a sunny kitchen window, ask specifically for an upright variety. It behaves far better confined to a container over the long haul. I've got an old friend, spent 30 years teaching high school biology, who swears the rosemary on her classroom windowsill got her through more parent-teacher conferences than the coffee pot ever did. Might be the plant. Might just be a comforting habit at this point. Either way, she keeps a fresh pot going every single semester without fail. Rosemary wants a sunny window in soil that drains fast. It does not like wet feet, dearie. Get that right, and it'll live for years in the same pot. Next up, something for an upset stomach. Peppermint. Folks think of it as a candy cane flavor, but this plant has one of the more solid research records on this whole list. Particularly for digestion, peppermint oil relaxes the smooth muscle lining your gut, the same muscle that cramps and spasms when your stomach's upset. Picture a clenched fist slowly opening back up. That's roughly what's happening in there. That relaxing effect is why peppermint shows up so often for bloating and general stomach discomfort. Clinical research on peppermint oil capsules for irritable bowel symptoms is genuinely some of the stronger evidence in the herbal world. Several trials, consistent results. Traditionally used as a simple tea for milder, everyday stomach upset too. Evidence indicates it. Tradition confirms it. That combination doesn't happen as often as you'd hope. Peppermint is a natural cross between spearmint and watermint, first formally identified in England in the late 1600s and listed in the London Pharmacopoeia by 1721. One of the newer plants on this list, historically speaking, and it still earned its place fast. Fair warning, this plant does not know the meaning of boundaries. Give it an inch of garden bed and it'll take the whole bed by August. Keep it in its own pot, always, or it'll strangle everything around it. If you deal with acid reflux regularly, peppermint can sometimes make that particular problem worse rather than better. Since it relaxes a valve, you actually want to stay tight in that case. Worth knowing before you brew a pot of it every night. There's also a difference worth knowing between peppermint and its cousins. Spearmint tastes milder and contains far less menthol, so it's gentler on a sensitive stomach, while true peppermint carries the stronger cooling effect people associate with digestive relief. If a recipe or a remedy just says mint, it's worth asking which one they actually mean, since the two behave a little differently. Peppermint tea has also been studied as a simple aid for tension headaches, applied a bit differently there. Diluted peppermint oil rubbed gently across the forehead and temples in a couple of small trials, with results that held up reasonably well against standard headache medication for mild cases. Worth trying before reaching straight for the pill bottle. Next time it's a mild one. Learned the boundary lesson the hard way myself. Lost half a flower bed to a peppermint plant that seemed perfectly innocent in April. Simple lesson though. Pot it and it behaves. Next, a plant for those winter colds. German chamomile, number 4 on this list, and the one people ask me about more than almost any other, mostly because they can't sleep. There's a compound in chamomile flowers called apigenin, and here's the kitchen table version. Your brain has a lock that, when opened, quiets things down, slows the nervous system a little, makes sleep easier. Prescription benzodiazepines open that lock hard and fast. Apigenin finds the same lock and turns it, but much more gently, without the drowsiness or the risk of dependence. Research on chamomile extract for mild anxiety and sleep difficulty has been going on for decades now, and it keeps pointing the same direction. Modest but real improvement, especially with regular use over several weeks rather than a single cup before bed. Ancient Egyptian records mention chamomile among plants dedicated to the sun god, and it turns up again in Roman and medieval European texts as a remedy for restlessness and fever alike. Traditionally used this exact way. a warm cup before bed for a stretch of history that stretches back thousands of years, long before anyone isolated apigenin at all. Well, was it my grandmother or her sister who first showed me chamomile tea before bed? Honestly, can't say anymore. Doesn't matter. The point stands. This one's been calming folks down for longer than anybody's kept written records. If you're on sedative medication of any kind or anything for sleep, talk to your doctor before adding chamomile regularly, since the two can layer on top of each other more than people expect. Simple precaution. Worth taking. One more thing worth flagging. German chamomile and Roman chamomile are two separate plants, closely related, similar smell, and largely similar traditional uses, but sold under nearly identical names at most nurseries. Either one will generally work for a calming tea, but if you're ever comparing research studies, most of the clinical work specifically involves the German variety, the one we're growing today. Chamomile shows up in digestive research too, not just sleep, particularly for the kind of mild, upset stomach and gas that comes with restlessness in small children, where it's been a European nursery room staple for generations, traditionally used as a very mild tea for exactly that, always well diluted for little ones, and always cleared with a pediatrician first. Chamomile does fine in a pot with decent light. Just don't let the soil dry out completely between waterings. It sulks a bit when that happens. Next, a plant for that nagging cough. Thyme. Small leaves, sharp smell, and a genuinely long history of being the thing people reached for before cough syrup existed in a bottle. Thyme contains a compound called thymol, and in lab studies, thymol shows real activity against certain bacteria and fungi, sort of like a natural cleaning crew working on contact. That's likely part of why thyme syrup shows up in old European home remedies for coughs and sore throats. Research indicates thyme extract combined with ivy leaf can ease cough frequency in acute bronchitis, studied in several European clinical trials. On its own, traditionally used as a simple steeped tea or honey syrup for throat irritation and mild cough. Potent little plant for something you can grow in a 4-inch pot. Ancient Egyptians used thyme in embalming, and Greek soldiers reportedly bathed in thyme-infused water before battle, believing it gave them courage and strength. Whether or not that particular legend holds up, the medicinal reputation stuck around far longer than the folklore did, straight through medieval monastery gardens and into modern kitchen windowsills. It practically thrives on neglect, which, if I'm honest, describes most of my favorite plants. Full sun, water when the soil's bone dry, and leave it alone otherwise. Thyme essential oil, the concentrated version, is far too strong to take internally without real guidance, and it isn't something I'd ever recommend without a knowledgeable practitioner involved. The dried herb and a simple tea are a different story entirely, and much gentler. There are dozens of thyme varieties out there: lemon thyme, caraway thyme, creeping thyme for ground cover, and common garden thyme, the one most closely tied to the cough and throat research. They all smell wonderful, but if you're growing this one specifically for its traditional respiratory use, common thyme is the variety worth seeking out at the nursery. There's also some laboratory research on thyme's oil against certain fungal skin infections, athlete's foot being the most studied example, diluted and applied topically. It's a smaller body of evidence than the cough research, promising rather than settled, but it fits the same general pattern this plant keeps showing: real activity against the small stuff that wears people down. A tough little plant for a tough little season. If a cough hangs on more than a week or comes with a fever, that's a doctor visit, not a tea. Next, something for frayed nerves. Lavender. Everybody knows the smell. Fewer people know there's an actual body of clinical research behind it, not just a candle aisle reputation. A specific oral lavender oil preparation called silexin has been studied in multiple randomized trials for anxiety, and the results are genuinely notable. One trial compared it directly against lorazepam, a prescription benzodiazepine, and found the two performed about equally over 6 weeks. What's interesting is the mechanism. Evidence suggests it works through calcium channels in the nerve cell, not through the same receptor system that benzodiazepines use, which is part of why it doesn't produce sedation or dependence the way those medications can. That's the oil, taken internally in a specific studied form. And I want to be plain about that distinction. It's not the same as smelling a candle or a sachet under your pillow. Aromatherapy lavender has its own smaller body of research for relaxation and sleep. Real, just gentler in effect and less studied. The name itself comes from the Latin word for washing, since Romans reportedly scented their bathwater with it, and it never really left European households after that, showing up in laundry sachets, sick rooms, and monastery infirmaries for the better part of 2,000 years. Confession time. I've killed more lavender plants than any other item on this list. It wants dry feet, full sun, and soil so lean it borders on gravel, and I kept babying it like a tomato plant. Rare mistake, took me 3 tries to learn it. Lavender oil taken internally isn't meant for young children, and it can interact with certain sedative medications, so if you're drawn to the oral route specifically, that's a conversation worth having with your doctor first, not a decision to make alone off a video. English lavender is the variety most tied to the calming research and the one that handles a container best, while French and Spanish lavender lean more ornamental, prettier flower heads, less consistent scent chemistry. If you want the plant that matches the studies I just mentioned, English lavender is the one to ask for by name. There's a hospital angle to this one too. Several nursing units, mine included, once trialed lavender aromatherapy in pre-surgical waiting areas and reported patients rating their anxiety noticeably lower before procedures compared to those in an unscented room. Small studies, easy to run, and the kind of gentle intervention that costs a hospital almost nothing to try. A blessing from the soil, once you stop drowning it in kindness. Next, one for a sore throat that's been sitting in your spice rack this whole time. Sage. The plant everybody has for one Thanksgiving stuffing recipe a year and otherwise ignores completely. Sage has a genuinely old reputation for sore throats, usually as a gargle, and lab research backs up some antimicrobial activity in its oil that would explain part of that. There's also a separate growing body of research on sage extract and memory performance in older adults. Small trials, but consistent direction. Studies indicate sage compounds slow the breakdown of a chemical messenger your brain uses to form and retrieve memories, sort of like plugging a slow drain so the signal stays in the synapse longer. This is actually the same broad approach used by some of the medications prescribed for early Alzheimer's symptoms, just far gentler. Different mechanism from rosemary, same general territory of interest to researchers. The plant's own botanical name comes from the Latin word for to heal, and Latin folk wisdom went so far as to ask why a person should ever fall ill with sage growing in their garden. That's an old vote of confidence, and traditionally used as tea or gargle for throat irritation for centuries afterward, right up through today. Drought tolerant, practically indestructible, forgets to be watered for 2 weeks, and forgives you for it every time. Sage in large, concentrated amounts, like undiluted essential oil, contains a compound that can affect the nervous system if overused, so keep it to culinary amounts and simple teas, and treat the concentrated oil with real respect, same as you would any potent plant extract. Common garden sage is different from the ornamental sages you'll see in flower beds with the bright red or purple blooms. Those are grown for looks and hummingbirds, not for the kitchen or the medicine chest. If the tag says Salvia officinalis, that's the one tied to the research I mentioned. The gray-green culinary variety. Sage has also been looked at for something a bit different, hot flashes during menopause, with a couple of small trials reporting fewer episodes per day after several weeks of regular use. It's a modest body of research so far, but it's exactly the kind of everyday complaint that doesn't always get taken seriously, and I like seeing it studied at all. Forgiving, that's the word for this one. Next, a plant most people know as bee bait and nothing more. Lemon balm. Its old botanical name, Melissa, comes straight from the Greek word for honeybee, because bees cannot leave this plant alone. Lemon balm extract has been studied for calmness and mood under stress, and a few trials specifically tested it before something stressful, like a timed math test, and measured lower reported anxiety along with steadier attention scores. Evidence indicates a mild, real calming effect. Nothing sedating, more like turning a dial down 2 notches instead of switching a light off. There's also older research pairing lemon balm with valerian for sleep support, and some newer work on digestion since it's a cousin of mint and shares some of that same stomach-settling reputation. Medieval monks grew it specifically for what they called cheering the heart and lifting the spirits, and it was one of the most widely planted medicinal herbs across European monastery gardens for centuries. Traditionally used as a simple tea, morning or evening, for exactly this: nerves and stomach both. This one grows like it's trying to prove something. Give it partial shade and average soil, and by midsummer you'll be giving cuttings to every neighbor on the street. One thing worth knowing: lemon balm can interact with thyroid medication in some cases, so if that applies to you, mention it to your doctor before making it a daily habit rather than an occasional cup. You can tell lemon balm apart from regular mint by crushing a leaf between your fingers. Mint smells sharp and cooling, while lemon balm gives off a soft, genuinely lemony scent with none of that menthol bite. Once you've smelled the two side by side, you'll never mix them up in a garden bed again. One more angle worth mentioning: small trials have looked at lemon balm cream applied directly to cold sores, the kind caused by the herpes simplex virus, and found faster healing and shorter outbreaks compared to no treatment at all. Topical, not internal, and a genuinely different use than the calming tea, but the same generous little plant behind both. Generous plant, rare to find one that gives that much back for that little effort. Next, and this is number 9, the one everybody's already decided is just a pizza topping. Oregano, number 9. And I'd bet good money most folks watching this have a jar of dried oregano in the cabinet and have never once considered it as anything but a pizza topping. Fresh oregano contains carvacrol, a compound that lab studies show has real activity against a surprising range of bacteria, sometimes compared favorably to standard antiseptic compounds in Petri dish testing. Picture it like a bouncer at the door, not letting certain unwanted guests set up shop. That lab-level activity is a long way from a guarantee it works the same way inside your body, and I want to be honest about that gap. It's a promising area of study, not a finished conclusion. The name itself comes from ancient Greek, roughly meaning joy of the mountain, and Greek and Roman households used it not just as a seasoning but as a genuine part of their medicine chest, for coughs, digestion, and wound care alike. Traditionally used across the Mediterranean for respiratory support and general wellness for a very long stretch of history, well before carvacrol had a name. Drought-tolerant, sun-loving, and about as low maintenance as anything on this whole list. Water it, walk away. Come back in 2 weeks to more oregano than you started with. Concentrated oregano oil is genuinely potent, strong enough that it needs to be diluted before it ever touches skin, and taken internally in supplement form, it can interact with blood-thinning medication, so treat the concentrated oil differently than the dried herb in your spice rack. Greek oregano is the variety with the strongest flavor and the one most closely tied to the carvacrol research, while some plants sold simply as oregano at big grocery chains are actually marjoram, a milder relative. If the flavor's ever disappointing, check the botanical name on the pot rather than assuming you just got a weak batch. Oregano oil has also been looked at for nail fungus, applied topically and diluted in small trials with results that were encouraging but limited by how few people were actually studied. I'd call that one worth watching rather than worth relying on just yet, the kind of finding that needs a larger trial before anybody should lean on it heavily. Simple plant, overlooked plant. Next, one that's been quietly settling stomachs on every continent for thousands of years. Holy basil, Tulsi if you know it by its Sanskrit name, and it's been treated as sacred in parts of India for longer than most of our countries have existed. Tulsi gets called an adaptogen in herbal circles, and here's the plain version of what that means. It appears to help your body's stress response settle back down faster after something stressful happens, like a thermostat resetting once the room's already cooled off instead of just staying stuck on high. Several small human trials have measured lower stress hormone markers and improved mood scores after weeks of Tulsi extract, alongside a longer traditional record for supporting immune resilience and general well-being. Research suggests real promise here, though study sizes remain fairly small, so I'd call this one encouraging rather than settled. In Ayurvedic tradition, Tulsi is considered so significant that many households keep a plant in a small courtyard shrine, tended daily, treated as something closer to a family member than a garden herb. That reverence has kept the plant, and the practice of drinking its tea, alive continuously for well over 3,000 years. It wants warmth, real warmth, more than most things on this list. Cold drafts and this plant do not get along. Keep it away from a chilly window pane in the colder months. Worth mentioning, Tulsi may lower blood sugar slightly, so if you're managing diabetes with medication, that's another one worth flagging to your doctor before regular use, simply so your numbers stay predictable. Tulsi is a genuinely different plant from the sweet basil you'd use in a pesto. Related, same family, but a different species, with a sharper, almost clove-like scent instead of that familiar Italian aroma. Nurseries sometimes stock it under the name Ocimum sanctum or Ocimum tenuiflorum, so look for either of those if sweet basil is all you're finding. There's also some research on Tulsi and seasonal respiratory comfort, including small trials during cold and flu season measuring fewer reported symptoms among regular users compared to a placebo group. Encouraging and consistent with centuries of traditional use for exactly that purpose, though I'd still call it supportive care rather than any kind of guaranteed protection. A gift from further east than my own garden, and one I've grown to respect the longer I've grown it. Next, the plant with more nausea research behind it than half the medicine cabinet. Ginger, the plant I promised you back at the start of this video, the one with more research behind it for nausea than a good portion of what's sitting in your bathroom cabinet. Ginger contains gingerol, and gingerol appears to calm the part of your gut and brain that coordinates the nausea response, sort of like turning down the volume on an alarm that's gone off louder than the situation actually calls for. Studies indicate consistent benefit for motion sickness, pregnancy-related nausea, and nausea following chemotherapy. This is genuinely one of the better studied plants on this entire list, with dozens of clinical trials behind it. Ginger has been traded along spice roots for thousands of years, prized so highly in ancient times that a pound of it could reportedly be traded for an entire sheep. Traditionally used the same way we still use it, fresh or steeped, across multiple, completely unconnected cultures, which tends to be a good sign a plant is doing something real. One important note here, and I say this as a nurse first, ginger can thin the blood a little, so if you're on blood-thinning medication of any kind, talk to your doctor before using it regularly in larger amounts. Simple precaution. Costs you nothing but a phone call. It grows from the actual root you'd buy at the grocery store. Plant a piece in a wide, shallow pot, and it'll sprout right there on your counter, given enough warmth and humidity. One tip that saved me a lot of disappointment, grocery store ginger is sometimes treated with a growth inhibitor to keep it from sprouting on the shelf. So if a piece sits in soil for weeks with nothing happening, that's usually why. Ask at a farmer's market or a specialty grocer for untreated root if you want better odds of it actually taking. Ginger's reach goes a bit beyond nausea, too. Several trials have looked at it for muscle soreness after exercise, with people reporting somewhat less next-day tenderness compared to a placebo group. Nowhere near as strong a finding as the nausea research, but a nice reminder that one plant rarely does just one thing. Reliable. If I had to pick one word for ginger, that's it. Next, its cousin from the same family, and one of the harder plants on this list to get right. Turmeric, ginger's cousin, same plant family, same warm golden color running through the root, and probably the single most studied plant on this entire list. The compound everybody talks about is curcumin, and curcumin has been studied extensively for inflammation, meaning it seems to calm down an overactive repair response in the body, like turning down a smoke alarm that's still going off long after the smoke's cleared. Here's the part most people never hear about. On its own, your body barely absorbs curcumin at all. It mostly passes right through you. Pair it with a bit of black pepper and some fat, oil or coconut milk, and absorption jumps dramatically, like adding the one key that finally lets a stuck door open. Turmeric has been used in India for well over 4,000 years, not just as medicine but as dye, preservative, and part of religious ceremony, woven so thoroughly into daily life that it's genuinely hard to separate the traditions from each other. That kind of continuous everyday use across millennia is exactly the kind of pattern that got researchers curious in the first place. And the same note applies here as with ginger. Curcumin can interact with blood thinners and certain gallbladder conditions, so this is another one worth a quick conversation with your doctor before regular use, especially at higher amounts than what you'd cook with. It needs warmth, humidity, and patience, closer to a tropical houseplant than a hardy herb, but a sunny kitchen window will usually get it through the year just fine. The grocery store root and the plant nursery start from the same basic rhizome, so if you can't find a turmeric plant locally, a fresh, plump piece of the root from the produce aisle will usually sprout in warm, damp soil, the same way ginger does. Patience is the main ingredient here. It takes its time waking up. A 2014 randomized trial of 367 people with knee osteoarthritis compared turmeric extract directly against ibuprofen over 4 weeks. The two performed similarly for pain relief, but the turmeric group reported significantly fewer stomach-related side effects. That's a genuinely notable result for a plant compound, and a practical one, and it's part of why turmeric keeps drawing serious research attention year after year. 12 plants down. Every single one already within reach, already familiar, already sitting somewhere close to you, whether that's a grocery store shelf, a neighbor's garden bed, or a nursery 10 minutes from home. Every evening I walk this same row of pots, the aloe by the stove, the rosemary by the mail pile, the ginger tucked in its warm corner, and I still find it something close to a small miracle that this much of what people spend real money on at the pharmacy is sitting right here on a windowsill, asking for almost nothing back but a little light and a little attention. Simple. That's really the whole story behind this entire list, if there's one at all. Not exotic, not expensive, just overlooked, growing quietly in plain sight while we all went looking somewhere else for answers. Now you don't need all 12 at once, and truth be told, I didn't grow mine that way either. Start with 1, maybe 2. Let them earn a spot on your windowsill before you add the next. Pick based on what your body actually deals with day to day. Restless nights, start with chamomile or lavender. Stomach troubles after meals, peppermint or ginger. Stress that won't quit, lemon balm or Tulsi. Aches and general inflammation, turmeric and ginger again. They work well planted right alongside each other. Same watering needs, same warm sunny corner. Let the plant match the problem, rather than growing all 12 just because a video told you to. Give whichever one you start with a real chance too. A single pot on a windowsill rarely does much of anything after 3 days. Give it a season, a real season, before you decide whether it earned a permanent spot in your home. Most good things with roots take longer than we'd like to admit, and I'll leave you with the same reminder I gave you at the start. None of this replaces your doctor, especially if you're managing a condition or taking medication already. Research suggests real, meaningful benefit from these plants, and generations of traditional use back a lot of it up. But evidence indicates that even good, gentle plants deserve a conversation with the person who knows your full health picture. If something in this video was useful to you, consider subscribing. It helps this kind of content keep reaching folks who'd otherwise never hear it. Here's my garden fence question for you today. Of these 12, which one do you already have a jar of in your cabinet without ever once thinking of it as medicine? And how long has it been sitting there unnoticed? Tell me down in the comments and tell me what you use it for. I read every one. Until next time, stay blessed, and may the Lord keep you and yours healthy.